Hey, everybody. We're getting ready to bring an interview, and I did prepare a little statement, and I wrote this myself, and I wanted to make sure that I projected this out before we get started here. We understand that flock cameras is a sensitive subject. Lebanon Now takes no stance on flock cameras, one way or the other. We are here to provide information, and we believe the chief of police to our town is a valuable source of that information. Whether you agree or disagree with the use of flock cameras, we ask that you be respectful and listen to the information being provided. A lot of times we live in this social media and copy and paste society where people already have their argument made before they ever show up to the discussion. That's not what we're trying to do here. We're not trying to make a platform for those same arguments. Lebanon Now is driven to provide credible, warranted information that people can look at, consider, and use as a jumping off point to do research and determine what legitimate facts are. That's why we're taking the time to have this conversation and ask these questions. At this time, I've also reached out to DFLOC Lebanon Facebook page because I am willing to give them an opportunity to present their side in this issue as well. As of now, I have not heard a response yet, but I'll keep you updated on that. For the people who genuinely want to learn about flock camera situation in Lebanon, what are these cameras? What are they going to do? How do they work? What information is collected? How is it used? Those are the kind of questions we're going to get into tonight. And once again, Lebanon Now nor I are neither pro or anti-flock. We're very pro-information here. I will say this, mad respect to Chief Jerry Harrison for coming here and putting himself out there in front of the public to answer these questions. Whether people agree with you or disagree with you, you know you're probably going to get kicked in the face a little bit for even having this conversation here on Lebanon Now. So Chief, I appreciate you being willing to put in the information you have out there and answer these questions. And with that, let's talk some flock cameras.
Well, let's go, Ryan. And I'll say, won't be the first time I've been kicked in the face in this job.
Right. Me and you have a history of you getting kicked in the face and you coming and seeing me. I'm surprised you still like me, sir.
Well, I've literally caught a foot to the face more than once, so it happens.
That's fair. For you guys at home, once again, we're going to be talking flock cameras. We broadcast a lot of city council stuff. At city council, you had brought up that you guys are putting some protections and some stuff into place, and I wanted to bring you on here and give you a chance to speak on those.
Yeah, I think, well, first of all, this is not new to Lebanon. We've had LPR systems, I think, since 2021, like 6 years almost, 5 or 6 years. So when we originally brought the flock system in, it was an advancement in technology. It wasn't a new thing, but because it's kind of the topic of the day across the country in a lot of places, it became the topic of the day here as well. And so now understanding the concerns and the importance of it, we've gone back and we're changing. We're not changing how we handle it, but we're codifying it. We're putting it in writing, and we're making a commitment to the community on how we're going to use it.
And respect for that, because the flock camera thing, it roiled up nationwide, come across, and came here to Nest at Home. People were showing up to city council. They were sending you messages. They were doing stuff. I feel like you have looked at that and at least taken steps and measures, no matter how they feel, to make sure the citizens are protected. Yeah,
and I want to be real clear on something. First of all, this is not the world according to Jerry that you see before you here. Flock in Lebanon is a result of a collaboration between the Lebanon Police Department and the community itself. Privacy advocates have come in, sat down with us, given us their concerns, talked about their values, and we've had a good back and forth. It's not an argument. I'm not going to engage in an argument. Competition is for losers. We are in this community. And I have to police this community with everyone, and I want to do that for a long time. So I don't have any opponents. They're just people that disagree with me. And as long as they're willing to sit down and have a fact-based conversation, we can trust each other, I'm happy to do that. And so we sat down, the two parties, we sat down together and we talked about what our values were and what we believe. And I took that information and some other things and some best practices and some bills in the state legislature, and use that to craft how we are going to manage flock and LPR at large in our community.
So let's get into how we're going to manage that. I don't want to keep going over the same old arguments over and over again. So what are the management things that you have put into place to add this layers of protection for the community?
The first big thing to talk about is if you'll go to our police department webpage, you'll see a button on there that talks about transparency for ALPR. I encourage everyone to go look at that page. It's really popular right now. It's getting the longest view You know, when people click on it, it's getting the longest attention span of any page on the city website by a long shot. So it's getting traction. The information's getting out there. When I visit to our webpage or looking at it, I know that people are getting word. Encourage everybody, if you haven't gone and looked at it, please go look at it. There's a lot of great information on there. And even if you don't like Flock, even if you don't like LPR, take a look at it. As a critical thinker, take a look at it and then think about it again. But anyways, you'll see a letter from me to the community about my values and Lebanon and the values of the Lebanon Police Department. You'll see a frequently asked questions page. And then there's a link to our transparency portal on the Flock side. We're working on getting a transparency portal up on the Axon side. And then there's what I'm most proud of, there's a draft ordinance on there. And that ordinance was crafted from a bill that didn't make it out of committee last year in the legislature. And so, you know, as you heard Sheriff Millsap this morning, was that today?
Mm-hmm. Yes, that was this morning.
As you heard Sheriff Millsap this morning talk about there's no law in Missouri. Well, there's about to be. There can be a law in Lebanon if the council supports this and passes this. There will be a law in Lebanon, and police officers will be held accountable criminally if they abuse the Flock system. So we're literally putting our money where our mouth is here, and when we make these commitments to our community.
So how are we going to find out if they have abused that system? Because one of the big concerns, let's just lay that concern out there. One of the big concerns, and one of them when yesterday we texted just a little bit back and forth, I didn't give you any questions or whatever on some stuff. One of the biggest things that we see is police misuse of this.
Right.
Tracking ex-wives, tracking a female cop was tracking an ex's new wife, looking because they think somebody's attractive. All of these other things.
Yep.
And any time that you have humans, you have misuse of a system. That's whether it be cops, doctors, whatever. And we get that. But how are you going to ensure, because the big backlash or the police are policing themselves, so how are we ensuring that you are holding true to this?
So first of all, we're going to have, we are forensically going back. So our first 3 Flock cameras came online the last week of February. So we've taken this ordinance, this commitment that we're making to the community in law. We're taking that and we've crafted an audit process using best practices and other things, citizen concerns. We've crafted this audit process. So we are now forensically going back and submitting all of the work we've done inside of all of our 3 LPR systems. So we have Genetec, which came online in 2021. We have Axon, which is similar to Flock, but a different company. And then we have Flock. And so we are going back and rebuilding those, or forensically building those audits. And when you go through those audits, you're looking for red flags, just like you would, it's like a forensic accountant would look for if a business had crime in it. We're going back and looking through those. We can see every single thing that happens inside that system. The irony is most of the negativity out there is about Flock. Nobody's talking about Genetec. Nobody's talking about Axon. Mm-hmm. It's all about Flock.
And I want to take just a second and make that clarification and fix me where I'm wrong. Mm-hmm. Flock is the name of a company.
That's right.
And most of the cameras, if my research is correct, are made by a certain company, but it's not Flock. They're the managers of the software.
Yeah.
Axios, I believe, are the ones that manufacture.
So I don't know that stuff. Okay. I don't know the technology side and business side of Flock.
Yeah.
I don't know. I know how we use it.
Yes. But yes, there are other similar companies out there.
Right.
Flock is just part of the equation, but I think it's become a nomer of Flock has been adopted as the word of the thing. Like Kleenex tissue, Velcro.
Like buying a Coke.
Buying a Coke, like a bubbly, a this or whatever. That has become the thing. Kleenex is not a tissue. Kleenex is a brand.
That's right.
Right. And I think Flock has kind of overtaken that. So ALPRs and these other companies, so it's not just Flock. So we do have to dissect that to understand it a bit.
We do. And the irony of this is, let's think critically for a minute. Let's be skeptics of the world. Knowing what I know now, having gone on this journey with some of our local citizens that were concerned about it, I've learned a tremendous amount about the 3 systems that we have. And the most interesting thing I've discovered is Flock is, by a considerable margin much easier to detect misuse in. It is there are several things that you can examine in there. It's very granular, and so you can really do a deep dive into what's happening. And so I encourage everybody in the next few days, I'm hoping by Friday, but sometime definitely before the next council meeting, we will have all of our audits caught up to the end of July on our webpage when you go into that LPR portal. And in that, you will see exactly what we're looking at in there. And I could give you a rundown if you like. I can go through some of those things. Yeah. So what are we looking at? We're looking to see, does the search activity align with the case numbers and the stated purpose? So when you go into the two technologically advanced LPR systems, we have Axon and Flock, you can see the officer's name, the timestamp of the search, the date time stamp of the range of the search, and you can see the purpose of the search, and then you can see the license plate, the vehicle description, the locations that they searched, all those things. And so when you're looking in there, some of the things, the red flags you're looking for are repeated use over a long time. So if I saw one, you were talking about officers stalking someone they were formerly in a relationship with. Yeah, that happened. And how did they find out about it? Through the Flock audit. The system works. Probably, I think somebody posted on social media last week, somebody came up to me and asked me if the number was accurate. They posted 50 officers across the country have been in trouble for abusing Flock across nationwide. And I said, I don't know, it's not my number.
Yeah.
But if it is true, if that is an accurate number, there's over 1 million cops in the country. There are millions of searches inside these ALPR systems. So, is 50 too many? Yes. These are people we trust with tremendous authority and influence in our communities. But at the same time, I think Millsap said it best, don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. You got 50 out of 1 million that are abusing this system. So we look for those red flags. Part of that is aligning the purpose for the search with the case number. And that purpose has to be a legitimate law enforcement function, which is built into our ordinance as well. User activity aligns with their role and responsibility. So, inside of any system, you have an administrator setting, and that person can manipulate all the settings in the system. And then you have a user setting, and they can't manipulate anything. They can just use the system for its intended purpose. Flock's no different. So we're checking every month to make sure, we don't have an entry-level position that has the ability to change anything inside, any settings inside the system. Networks and sharing settings match agency policy. This is the eye-opener for me. Everybody, the biggest pushback that I've had on Flock is the sharing side.
Yes.
Every conversation starts out the same, Ryan. I trust you guys. My experience with the Lebanon Police Department is that you guys are trustworthy every time. Then the next thing is, but I don't know who you're sharing with.
To pause right here, that leads into another big question that I had, since we're going to address this right now.
Yeah.
Was that it seems like the problem is Flock itself. And remember how we dissected it. Flock, the company, not the camera, not the other ones, the Flock company itself. There are reports of them intentionally or intentionally outside in the past opening data to other agencies, even though in that required. So what protections are there? And let's get into that.
So having done a deep dive into the system, taken a lot of training on it recently, and then diving into it face first, what I found interesting is, let's say that, so first of all, and it's in the ordinance, we can't use our Flocks. We are making a commitment. We can't use our Flock system for, say, immigration enforcement. One of the big myths that's out there right now is that agencies have used it for reproductive rights to enforce laws about reproductive rights. It's not true. That case that they talk about out of Texas, if you dig into it, again, let's think critically for a minute. Fact check me. You can go online. You can find it right now. That case was a missing persons case out of a Texas law enforcement agency. They were using Flock in relation to a missing persons case, not in relation to what that missing person may have been doing. They were just trying to locate the missing person. However, we've made that commitment. We're not going to use it for things that are otherwise lawful, no matter where you're at. But the sharing thing, the biggest thing for the sharing side is we are only going to share with what we are calling verified partner agencies. So that's inside the ordinance also. We can only share with a verified partner agency. So we've set a deadline of January 1st of 2027. So by January 1st of 2027, our team will have gone in and searched every single agency we share with. Right now we're sharing with over 1,200 agencies. We're probably in the next week or two, we will have vetted every single agency that we share with. And what we're looking for is, it's an open source search, and we're trying to see if there's any evidence that that organization if police officers have misused Flock. And if we find that they have misused Flock, then how did they respond to it? And if they're not managing their Flock usage in alignment with our values and our community's values, then we're simply not going to share with them. We have it set to one-to-one sharing. We have it set to not be used for, there's a setting in there that keeps it from being used for immigration. Now you ask, what about these accidental sharings? What I found in there when I got into it was we can audit that. We can audit who bumps into our system, right? And I can see every single agency that touches our system. And so it's easy enough to go in there and look and see, did a federal agency come in here and use it, and what did they use it for? So from a sharing standpoint, as I said, that was one of the biggest concerns. And so I take that concern very seriously. And so we're taking that time. And by the way, the ordinance requires us to go through every single agency every 2 years. So every year we're going to put ourselves on a cycle. We're going to test half of the agencies every year. And that way we'll keep up with that 2-year cycle without having to devote a week of effort to it every year.
So to ask this question, what is considered and what are or some just in shorthand parameters for that to be a accredited agency?
To be a verified partner agency, under our policies and ordinance is going to be an open source search, so an internet search. You get on there and just look to see if there's any abuse of Flock by their law enforcement personnel. And then if you find some, which we already have, if you find some, how did that agency respond to it? So I think we've found a couple agencies so far that had evidence of misuse, and both agencies responded appropriately to it. They enforced the law, they enforced their policies, and they took punitive action against the officers that were abusing the system. So I think that is a valid way for us to effectively use Flock, at the same time respecting our community's concerns about how we want to see Flock used. And I want to talk about that sharing thing for just a minute.
Yeah.
That sharing thing is the tipping point for this brand of LPR.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
That is it is a widely used system that communicates very well. And I want to tell you a story. You may not remember this, but I was a police chief for 8 years in Independence, Kansas, southeast Kansas. We were getting Flock, but we didn't have Flock yet. And we had an abusive parent who lived in Wichita. We were about 2 hours from Wichita. We had an abusive father who was estranged from his children. He came down to the elementary school. He tricked his child into getting in the car with him at the school drop-off line at the beginning of the school day. Kid got back he'd been dropped off, got in the car with the abusive parent. Then the parent drove to the high school and picked up his other son, or middle school rather, I think it was, picked up his other son. Now the other son, when he was interviewed later, he said, I knew better than to get into the car, but I felt like I was my brother's best chance at safety. So he got into the car courageously to protect his brother. And then they were off. And I mean, they were off. So Wichita has a doctor Flock. And so they were able to search we contacted them immediately. They were able to search their system. They were able to see there was a Flock camera right near this guy lived. They were able to determine he had not been back by that camera since school pickup. They sent an officer over there. They checked the residence. The guy wasn't there. So now what do? This is a big country, Ryan. Mm-hmm. So eventually the Flock system picked them up as they traveled east across the United States. They were on their way to Georgia. We caught them 10 hours away, I think in Tennessee. It took that long for us to keep getting the hits and coordinate with our partners. 10 hours away. They were a 10-hour drive away from Independence, 10 hours after the pickup. And we had those kids back in custody. Without Flock, I don't know how that would have happened. I don't know that it would have got caught during school enrollment. It's hard to say. These systems don't all talk to each other. The schools aren't necessarily going in and checking the National Children's and Exploited Children's database and the Kansas State database of missing persons, or in Missouri, the Missouri one. So I tell that story is powerful to me. It means a lot to me. I lived through it. So the sharing piece is very important. So in order to keep that sharing piece there, that sharing piece is what's going to save lives in our community, Ryan. I believe strongly in it. So in order to keep that sharing piece there and respect our community's values, that's why we're going to go in and do the best we can to research every agency that we share with. Now, are we sharing with agencies that we haven't researched yet? Of course we are. We just implemented this week. By the time that we have our work session with City Council and I present this all to City Council, we will have fully implemented everything required in the ordinance, and we will be living by this ordinance 100% on that date. And starting September 1st, we'll do our first audit truly in accordance with this ordinance, because the ordinance requires us to do that. And the ordinance also requires us to report all the activity, the wins, the searches, everything with City Council every year. So we're going to be reporting that to you, the citizens, monthly on our webpage, and we will compile it and report it annually.
And you guys are self-imposing this. There's no law. There's no whatever. And let me just recap that you guys sat down with some people and privacy protection groups to come up with this.
Yes.
What are your concerns about Flock itself? Because when I said I want to ask you this question, I think it's a lot of the worries now coming from marketing, and in no ways is the defense or anything. One of the big arguments is that, well, I have one of these, but I decide to share my data on this, and then you need a warrant to grab this and all of this other stuff. But if I go from here to here to here, we all know that it's technically, and I've already got kicked in the face for this, it's not Fourth Amendment because the Supreme Court has not ruled it's not the Fourth Amendment. This has been in front of them. You can interpret it. You can say whatever you want. I don't like taxes, but they say I have to pay them. So the law still falls in. So back to marketing. I've been involved in very high-level digital marketing. You're not agreeing to everything you sign up for marketers either. You're not signing up for everything that's following you. If you think that you know what's being tracked, I had somebody the other day that says, I'm very careful about what I share on my phone. I'm like, I'm sure there's tons of stuff, unless you sit down and read that terms of service. Now, once again, I'm not defending Flock. I'm not defending whatever. But they say that that's a choice. We live in this digital world that used to, without Flock, you would just go from business to business to business, and you would say, hey, you got a camera out front. And you would grab that to see if you could see them. So right. Flock basically just makes this an automatic system of in public of doing that. One of the big things is your Flock holds a ton of data about me that you can warrantlessly search. Now you share all that. How are you, I guess the big question, maybe there's not an answer for this, but I want to address it, is how do you protect against the company you bought the cameras from?
Well, first of all, I want to make a correction to your statement there.
Okay.
Flock does not hold a ton of data about you at all. Okay. What Flock holds is an image of the back of your car or the front of your car, whichever side it happened to capture.
A single image.
It holds an image of a license plate. You can't see the driver. I'm gonna show some images. What I did was I punched in my my city vehicle. I punched it into the Flock search system so that I could do a community demo, because I don't want people out stalking some random tag, So I used my own. I used my city vehicle, and you're going to see when you come to that work session on the 24th at 6 p.m. at Lebanon City Hall, you're going to see that you cannot see the driver. So this facial recognition stuff is nonsense. This is a made-up misinformation campaign. There is not facial recognition. I don't know how in the world it could even happen. Not with the cameras that we have right now. It certainly couldn't. And you're going to see that. I have a picture of my car. As I did a whole month. That's as far back as you can go. I did a 30-day search, and I picked out the very best pictures to show the community what you can see. Because as you know, pictures and video, Sometimes they come out great, sometimes they don't. Well, I purposely picked out the best ones. So anyway, it doesn't hold data about you. It holds that image. That image, what does that image tell us? That image tells us where, the tag, the vehicle, and let's see where the camera was, the time and date that you went by it, and the vehicle and the license plate. That's it. It doesn't now. The system doesn't hold. This is Ryan Shearer's 1987 Honda Civic.
How do you know what I drive? Oh,
It's just a guess. But it doesn't show that. It just holds that tag. If we want to know whose car that is, then we've got to go into the state system that you heard MILSAP Mules, the Missouri Uniform Law Enforcement System. We got to go into that and search out your tag. That's where the sensitive data is, not inside Flock.
So when you go to Flock and you type in, so I'm looking for tag number 1111111, right? You're just looking for a tag. You can't go, I'm looking for Ryan Shearer and bring up Ryan Shearer.
Correct. Now, if I know that you drive a yellow 88 Honda Civic, I can punch in yellow 88 Honda Civic. Whatever that description is that the victim gives us, we can punch that in there and see if it comes up.
So how long does Flock hold this data for?
30 days. And that's also in the ordinance, 30 days. The only image that's held longer than that is if we go in, export it out of Flock, which, by the way, any exports are going to show up in the audit. So it's not like you can export it and then take it home. We're going to see that you exported it, and then we're going to be able to go back and look and see what you did with that export. It should be in a police report, and if it's not, then now we have a problem. But anyway, so you can export it out of Flock, and you can upload it into the evidence side, and it'll be preserved with that police report in evidence. So if Ryan Shearer and his 88 Honda Civic goes and knocks over a gas station and then runs off, we're going to get him for armed robbery. If he goes by that Flock, we know it's a yellow 88 Honda Civic. Oh, now we got a license plate. Now we can put a bolo out to everybody in the region, and we can start looking for this guy.
So is it like when you look at old school NCIS, CIA, or whatever those
NCIC.
NCIC, all of those. It's like a guy rubs, well, I know it's a XYZ, and they get this grainy camera thing, and they zoom in, and they special superimpose it.
Oh, yeah. So
basically, that is all BS. That doesn't happen, but we have a Flock system. So with Flock, with the data that you're saving, so back to the marketing thing, is so kind of in the same sense with marketing. Your phone has an IEM number, and it takes that, and then it associates it with some of your data, and then you sign in that TV, it transfers to your data, and it goes to that. So Flock doesn't know it's Ryan Shearer.
Right.
So they can't attach that data to the other data that they're saying they're carrying, because that all it's doing is stacking pictures.
That's right.
It's not taking video. And I know because everybody, it's funny, I want to throw in a little bit of stuff here. Everybody's wondering, and you've probably heard it too, is that we can take pictures from space. Why is our security camera so grainy? The reason is storage. The 100% reason is storage, is because I know working with video and digital video every day, that's a lot of storage. You're talking gigs upon gigs upon gigs. And we know Flock cameras don't do CCTV. They're not filming you over and over and over because there's no way to store. If you think about all the towns, every camera running 24/7, so which is just taking a black and white flat picture. Or is it color?
Yeah, it's color. Let's talk about that for a minute. So people have this people believe that the video is this perfect silent witness. And if I got video, I'm golden. Mm-hmm. First of all, pictures, video, none of it solves crime. It is a tool. It is a lead. It is a piece of evidence, but it takes a knowledgeable, solid police officer that knows what they're doing to come along and use that evidence and interpret that evidence to help it solve crime. Video is nothing more than a two-dimensional representation of what happened. And to go to your point, when you talk about why does a security video look so goofy, I'm going to get out ahead of my skis here, but I've had a little bit of training in this. When we take video evidence, you have to go back and do what the experts call interrogating that video. So as an example, if you had, like in the jail that I used to work in, we had a camera up there on the corner, and it shot down over what we're doing. And that camera was always running, and it preserved it all, 24/7. It preserved all that information. What was it really doing? It was preserving the same thing it saw over and over and over again to make it run faster and to save data. Now, if you came along and did this, that camera would capture that. it would make changes to this part of the video, and that's it, because all this other stuff didn't move.
Okay, that's fair.
So keep that in mind. Video is not a perfect silent witness. It is not 100% accurate recreation of what's happening. And so even when we take video, we still have to interrogate that video and go in there and make sure that it's accurately representing what is shown. Now, I do want to go to one other thing you said earlier. You talked about data on your phone. So, and you talked about, well, you need a warrant for that. I don't. I want to show you something. I'm not going to do it right here, but let me see if I can get, okay. So let's look on my phone here. Let's say we've got this app right here and we want to open it and we want to learn how to play guitar or whatever that app does.
Yeah.
When you open that app, when you download that app, you agree to certain things. You said you don't know all the things you agree to when you're working in marketing. You are correct. When you did that, some of your apps are probably, you told them, hey, you can follow me around. And and so that's
even if, and I did this for marketing, even if your overall location is off, even if your overall iPhone's a little bit better, but a lot of that, your app specific can allocate that because they're specific terms of service.
So yes, it's a term of service. You contractually agree to it when you put that app on your phone. Now I want to take you a step further. When you go into like Google Maps, there's a lot of what they call crowd sharing on that Google map. And when you're driving through traffic, you can look on there and you see the street turns red because traffic's backed up right there. Why is that? Because everybody backed up in that traffic, their phone is telling Google Map, crowdsourcing information, telling Google Map that I'm not moving. So that's happening with Google Maps. You agreed to that. You said, I'm going to do that. I did it too. Well, let me tell you a story. So we use private databases for searches. You can search for stolen stuff. You can search all kinds of things for private database. And by the way, your car insurance company uses this thing. Your homeowner's insurance company uses it. A lot of different landlords use it. Banks use it. You use these private search companies. Private detectives use them. And there's several of them out there, and they're all very powerful search tools. And where do you think they're getting their information? But from these apps are selling your data to this search engine.
Marketing data. And I mean, because it's labeled usually as marketing data. Okay. But yes, that's what it is.
So what blew my mind was a couple of years ago when I was here at Lebanon, we were looking at which company do we want to use because they're very powerful search tools and they are regulated federally, at least as far as our use goes. I don't know about others. And we have the same restrictions on it. We have to have a law enforcement reason to be using this database, and they're audited and they're tracked, and you know, there's an audit trail in there. You can see everything an officer does in there. So it's a legitimate tool. However, you are volunteering your information to this. They are so powerful that the demo guy, the sales guy said, let me show you something. Let's pretend that you guys have a leaving the scene crash at 7th and Jefferson, and all you have is it's a white Ford pickup. You don't know if it's new, you don't know if it's old, just white Ford. So they punched in white Ford pickup into the search thing. They drew a circle 1.25 miles. I don't know why they picked 1.25 miles, but they did a 1.25 miles circle. And they showed us every registered owner of a white Ford pickup truck within that 1.25 mile circle. And that data didn't come from the government. That data was information that you agreed when you got your insurance, when you got this app, whatever you did, when you got a loan from somebody. This is all data that you have agreed to share. And the no Fourth Amendment that is not a protected Fourth Amendment search because the Fourth Amendment protects you from who?
The police.
The government.
The government.
The Fourth Amendment doesn't protect you from Walmart. You have no freedom of speech in Walmart.
Nope.
You have freedom of speech in Lebanon City Hall, but you don't have freedom of speech in Walmart because that is a private entity. There's no constitutional protection. So that is not an unreasonable search because you volunteered that information. It is not the government doing the search. The government is a customer of it. And so, you know, people are worried about FLoC and privacy. And that's, you know, if you want to talk about privacy, let's talk about those. There are other things that are more intrusive than something taking a picture of the color of your car going down the road.
Yeah, and that's what I wanted to reiterate with the marketing data, because that's stuff that we had to learn when we were first getting, it's called programmatic advertising. It's the same thing. It's the same thing in what we're pulling. So what happens is most people, we're going to say the mass populace. I have a banking app on my phone. My car insurance is on my phone. My emails, I got, over life doing business, I've collected multiple emails. I've collected email addresses, things like that. Social media, all that. So they're all there. So one of the things that will be in terms of service, and I'm going to explain this easy as I can, is let's say my Progressive, I don't want to name a company, but let's say my Progressive app, right, is on there. So in the terms of service says, hey, this app can go get all the data from your other apps. It can go have all the other stuff that your other apps are collecting. Now, a lot of times with apps, it says, I can't share that data, right? It doesn't mean that that app isn't collecting that data.
Okay.
Right? So that app it just can't share it. So it's going to collect it, right? Yeah, a lot of times when you open, you'll see you'll see apps for some reason that are just inflated and are taking up a lot of space on your phone. A lot of it's the data. Then you hit that, or there's an app refresh, or you hit something, or you say, okay, I like Progressive, I trust Progressive, so Progressive can have my information. That app can go into all those other apps and take that information and send it out. So now it's being sold. So there's many, many workarounds in that. So when you hear that, and I'm not saying, and once again, not for or against Flock. What I'm saying is I want logical arguments that we can hang our hat on to have a serious conversation. Sure. And if you are on the internet, anywhere near it, if you're internet adjacent, you are being surveilled way more than you are going to stand up and admit you are.
And not by the government.
And not by the government.
And also by your own free will.
And when, I always say when Edward, and this is a little off of your subject, when Edward Snowden came out and said, look at what the NSA is doing and nobody cared, that was the time to correct these things.
So I want to come back to that audit checklist.
Yep.
Because there's quite a few things left to go over. So we talked about sharing. There's also the event log. So an event log shows you so one is a search log, the other is an event log of the things that are being done inside of the system. So we can see who's doing what inside the system and why they're doing it, and if they should have that permission to do it. We are going to check the admin roles and permissions every month. We're checking who has the right to go in and allow sharing every month. Checking those sharing relationships, make sure they align with policy and legal requirements. We're going to ensure that everybody is up to date on their training on a monthly basis. And then if we have a finding, we're going to list it. And when we list that finding, then there is a procedure alongside of it that says, okay, if there is a finding, what appears like shouldn't be happening is happening. That gets flagged and sent directly to me, and then I review it, and then I assign that out for an investigation if I can't confirm that it's okay. So there is a written process for all of that. And we will report on those findings. Now, we're not going to say that Officer Shearer got in there and did X, Y, and Z. No, we're going to say this misuse was detected and addressed. Now, we can't share personal information publicly, but we can say that misuse was detected and it was and the rules were enforced. We can see how many license plates were scanned, so that'll be reported. Just total drive-bys of the system. We can see the number of alerts. So inside that system, the only communication that those LPR systems have with outside systems is there is an interface that allows uploads. So every day the state of Missouri gets a list, we call it a hot list. They get a list of all the stolen cars, stolen guns, whatever, warrants associated, like this driver to this car has a warrant. All that kind of stuff that gets put into the system gets uploaded into a hot list every day. There's a federal hot list and a state hot list. And by the way, we can make our own local hot list so that if you knocked over that gas station, we could see your vehicle, get the description of it, find it in the system, and then we take that tag and put it into the hot list so that if anybody sees that anywhere in the Flock Nation, then you're going to get stopped and contacted and hopefully taken into custody. So there's all those things. Number of cases by type. So this was something that the privacy advocates asked for was, we want to know, number one, what are the reasons you're searching for and how many times are you searching? So when you see our audit every month, you're going to see, 20 stolen car searches, 50 domestic violence searches, whatever, where the person left the scene and before we got there, but we need to talk to him. So we entered him in, that kind of thing. Number of cases by type, number of searches by officers. So the privacy advocates asked for that. And I thought, why not? So you'll see the officer's badge number and how many times. So when you get on there, my badge number is 301. Everybody out there in Lebanon now land, write it down. Go in there and see when we get our audits up, you'll see my search history in there under 301. You can see exactly how many searches I've performed inside the system. We have the number of arrests or recoveries from ALPR usage. We call these wins.
Okay.
These are times when the system brought forth that lead. Now let's talk about one more thing that privacy rights folks are worried about. Acting on a flock hit alone. So that's against this ordinance and it's against our policy. When a Lebanon police officer uses flock, I can't speak for anywhere else but Lebanon, and I'm not gonna. That'd be speculation, but I can tell you what's happening in our little piece of the world. When a Lebanon police officer uses flock, and let's say they're driving down the road and boom, they get that armed robbery suspect hit from your 87 Honda Civic.
Mm-hmm. The year keeps changing.
Well, yeah, that happens. Honda Civics do that. Everybody knows that.
It does. It is. Yeah.
But anyway, the officer sees the alert come out. That car just drove through 7th and Jefferson. Mm-hmm. Okay, so all the units see the alert and they're moving in towards 7th and Jefferson looking for this Honda Civic. Now, before they can stop it, they'll see that license plate on the hit. They got to grab that plate and they got to punch it into the state system, Department of Revenue and Mules. So there's two sides to that search. One is the Department of Revenue search. That's what actually stores all your personal identifying information. And then there's the Mules side, which is the wanted side. And that's what stores the criminal information side. So we'd know all about that 88 Honda or 87 Honda Civic and who owns it and where they live. And then the criminal want would show armed robbery suspect, Lebanon PD. But we've got to confirm that through the state system before we make that contact. Now, there might be an exigent circumstance in which you could have an exception to that. Maybe it's an armed robbery suspect, you're right at the city limits, or maybe it's just a public safety issue, but it would be an exception. It wouldn't be the rule. And we should be able to see that in the usage of it. So those wins will be reported every month. The number of verified partner agencies we share with will be reported every month. And then the number of unverified agencies we share with will be reported every month. However, that will drop off because as I said before, by ordinance, it will be against the law for us to share with anybody that we haven't verified as a partner agency. So, but we're going to, until January 1st, we're going to continue to report that. I'm hopeful that we have that number at 0 by the time this ordinance passes, and we'll be reporting. There will be none to report.
So tell me a little bit about the ordinance. Let's go back to it. And the draft is on the website, correct?
Yes.
Okay. So the draft is on the website. You can grab it. I believe it's in the article we wrote about it. And we'll make sure here on Lebanon Now we have that public as well. We've written a couple stories about it and pointed them to that website as well. I think it's a good tool. So in that ordinance, if somebody breaks that ordinance, if you or one of your deputies or a clerk or whatever in your office breaks that ordinance, what is the punishment? What are we looking at as far as what happens?
So the way the ordinance is written down in the violations section, there's a lot of things that are required to happen in the ordinance, as you know, but the violation and penalties section. Any person who knowingly commits any of the following acts shall be fined $250 for a first offense and $500 for a second or subsequent offense within any 12-month period. So, you heard Millsap talk about, Sheriff Millsap said, if you want to make it a felony, make it a felony. They'll lose their job. They'll be decertified. And that's true. However, city council and the city and the municipal courts do not have the lawful authority to impose a felony on anybody. That would send people to prison. So we can only do misdemeanors in city court. If you want that to be a felony charge, you need to lobby your state legislators to pass a state statute. But because the state legislature has failed to step forward and lead on this, the city of Lebanon is going to lead on it. We're going to lead the state, and we're going to have a flock ordinance, and or LPR ordinance, and we're putting it into law and making that commitment to our community. But some of the things that are in violation would be access the LPR system without authorization. So you said clerk. So just because you're a clerk in the police department doesn't necessarily mean you're authorized to get into that system. Our analyst is not a police officer, but she's authorized to get into the system. She is the auditor of the system, and I selected her for the auditor because she reports directly to me. So no one can apply any pressure to her for reporting them potentially violating the ALPR system. So, but anyways, so unauthorized access, access it under another operator's identifier. So an officer is careless and leaves a sign-in open, and somebody sits down and starts running stuff under that sign-in. That's illegal. That's going to get you a fine.
Or somebody doesn't want to flag the system too much, so they're shopping, log. You would hope you would hope nobody would give that login, but that could flag and be punishable too.
Yes. And then allows the use of the ALPR system by a non-trained personnel, or uses ALPR system data for personal, political, or commercial purposes, or discloses ALPR system data in violation of this section. So, we've tried to cover our bases on all the abusive things that someone can do with that. And like I said, we're putting our money where our mouth is. $250 fine for the first offense, $500 fine for the second offense. That may not sound like much, but it's actually going to be your paycheck, because if you're not going to follow the law, you're not going to serve the city of Lebanon.
Because it would be a couple of things that go with that. Because I know I can hear some of that's not much. That's a slap on the wrist. That's not going to do whatever.
But it's their job.
But it's their job. Yeah. It's not that is putting them on public record that they did this.
That's right.
But what happens after that is now they are on public record with a misdemeanor that they disobeyed the flock, they disobeyed an ordinance, they broke the law, and they're no longer going to be a deputy for you. They're not going to, or they're not going to work with you. They're not going to be part of that. So that is a career-ending misdemeanor.
Yes. And by the way, there's a whole lot of those. So that's not unique to have a career-ending misdemeanor on the books. That's pretty typical.
And how would you address? Kind of a hard question is you've got this blue wall, the police are policing the police, all of that. How do you want to address that? Because that's going to come up. That's going to be, that is going to be a thing that I feel I would like to ask you, how are you going to address that particular thing?
So that's been the biggest challenge for me to overcome. And I've reached out to our partners in the area and talked about it. Like, what are some ideas about how do we address this? Because not the biggest thing, but the only thing of all the concerns or all the demands that the activists have, the only one that I haven't worked through yet is that we want an outside entity to do these audits. You guys are doing your own audits. We want an outside entity to do that. I understand that. I get where that's coming from. But there's some problems there. And, we also police ourselves on all of our other misconduct. If a Lebanon police officer violates department policy, it is the leadership chain of command in the Lebanon Police Department that enforce that policy and hold that officer accountable to whatever level of accountability they get. Now, if a Lebanon police officer is accused of breaking the law, we usually will call the sheriff's department or the highway patrol to come and investigate that, depending on how serious it is. And the sheriff's office does the same thing. If they have someone accused, that's pretty typical in our world. It's kind of an unwritten rule that we help each other out. But the only solution that I've kicked around is all of these databases that I was talking about with your license plate information in them, the ones that actually have data about you in them, the PII, person identifiable information. Those are called, under a big umbrella, those are called CJIS databases, which is Criminal Justice Information Systems. And there's more than one database in there. There are wants and warrants statewide, wants and warrants nationally. And wants and warrants can be like an arrest warrant or a stolen item, stolen gun, stolen car, whatever. So there's that database. There's your driver's license database. There's license plate database. There's multiple databases under the government umbrella of CJIS. And the FBI, that's regulated nationally by the information system portion of the FBI. At the state level, it's governed by the Highway Patrol's information system side, the Mules Department and Highway Patrol. They set the standards. FBI sets the overall rules for the country, and everybody has to follow them, or There are criminal penalties involved. There's also, you lose access to the systems for your entire organization, which would be devastating as far as efficiency goes. And then the state also enforces it. They come down and audit us annually on system security and systems use, both. And so I guess the point I'm building up to is I can't say, I can't go to the city council and say, okay, mayor, you're going to be the police department auditor. It is illegal for me to allow the mayor to look at our systems. And I don't know, there are many people listening or watching right now that have probably come into a police department, and this is how it's always worked in the dispatch centers that I've worked in. A visitor comes in that isn't certified and isn't subject to the security agreements. Everybody says, oh, we have a visitor coming in, shut your screens. All the screens get disabled, the person walks in, because we can't share that. We can't even show that information. So whoever's going to audit that information, if we get an outside auditor, they have to be someone who's governed under the CJIS umbrella. And examples of that would be the sheriff's office, the highway patrol, and our local dispatch center, Laclede County Central Dispatch. So the only real viable options would be one of our local partners, the sheriff's office or the Laclede County Central Dispatch. I've spoken with Laclede County Central Dispatch. Sheriff Frederick, I'll be reaching out to you soon to have this conversation.
That's your camera. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
So hold on. There it is. Do it again.
Sheriff Frederick, I hope you're watching. I know you are. You're a huge fan. I don't know if everybody knows that. Sheriff Frederick's a huge fan of the Lebanon Police Department.
Oh, I thought you meant in Lebanon now. Okay. But anyway, yeah.
But anyway, yeah, so we'll be reaching out to our partners. We're trying to work through how that's going to look. It's not a huge ask, but it's a bit of an ask. It's some work. It's probably 2 or 3 hours a month of going in and checking the system. But I think it's a hurdle we can jump over.
So in a budgetary sense, would that mean that you would fund that other, you would pay that other partner, you would have to pay them out some money to do that?
It would be up to how the partner wants to work it out. We could,
but it could be a possibility.
It's a possibility.
We'll look at your books. You're just going to pay that person that much time it takes.
Sure.
Whatever. So,
sure.
So we're going to. So you're willing to take some expense to explore that.
Sure.
That's kind of the point I'm making.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, there's other ways to get around that. We could do in-kind services or some kind of trade.
Yeah.
In resources, but the partnerships are really strong in locally. So I have no doubt that we are considering it. I'm not committing to it right now.
Of course.
But I'm saying to the privacy advocates out there that are listening that have that concern, that's the best answer that I can come up with for you right now. And I'm not saying we're going to do that, but we are talking with our partners about it.
And like I said, I'm not trying to throw you under the. I'm just these are questions that as
come at me, bro.
I'm a real logical guy, and so when I look at all the arguments against Flock, so let's kind of relax. We're going to finish this up. Have we got your information covered?
Pretty well.
Okay.
Yeah.
So a lot of the arguments that we set and we take and we look at. Pulaski County Sheriff, I think it was yesterday, came out with a long thing as well. And when you're looking at law enforcement and you're looking at these doing that and what is and what isn't, there's certain arguments that we just kind of set aside, right? Because I want to know the real issues. Because there are real issues to Flock. And what I found was being able to trust Flock itself. I think that is a big hurdle that we have to figure out. It's being able to trust Flock itself. What happens with that data, what it does. Police officer misuse. Right? Where you have humans, you're going to have misuse. You see people arrested all the time in pharmacies because they're stealing drugs. You see people all the time doing things. The police are going to be no different. If you have cops, you're going to have corruption and you're going to have things, which I think is pushed on a big ACAB, and you got all these First Amendment auditor videos, and you have a whole culture that just follows cops around to kick them. Not all cops are bad cops. I don't think any industry is going to be like that, but I think that's a thing that we need to overcome and we need to talk about. And I think this transparency is part of talking about that. As far as it being amendments, we can argue that all day. That's kind of until the Supreme Court says yes or no. It's legal. It would take a separate ruling from the Supreme Court, and we're talking in logical and facts. There might be litigation, there might be things going on, but it is legal. Therefore, we are license plate readers can be a thing. So. But it's always litigation. It always can change. But as it sits right now, it's that way. So yeah, the police misuse, I think when I stepped away from it, from all the days and days of research and just setting things aside that are debatable or whatever, being able to trust Flock and police misuse and the police policing the police about the thing were the thing where I resided, that even no matter how many conversations we have, I think citizens are going to still have concerns in those three places. And I feel those are logical, warranted concerns. So whether we agree or not agree, I feel like what you're doing addresses those things.
Yeah, I want to hit on some of those. I want to hit on all of those, actually. I want to hit on before I jump into them, though, I do want to bring one more thing up about sharing. When you read the Law Enforcement Code of Ethics, everybody go look it up. It's not hard to find. When you read the Law Enforcement Code of Ethics, there is a thing in there that says you will help out other law enforcement when asked for help. And so I think that is an essential piece of the sharing of data in Flock. We will help out where other law enforcement agencies are asking for our help. And the verified partner process, I hope, is a good way, an acceptable way for our community to allow that to happen. I want to talk about the data and ownership of the data. We own that data. The city of Lebanon owns that data. That's in the contract over and over again. It's not sold to third parties. This is, again, misinformation. You talked about as long as you have human beings in a system, they're fallible. There's going to be corruption. You're right. And, in law enforcement, you hear some cliches like nobody hates bad cops more than good cops, which is true. And the few bad apples spoil the bunch. That statement I take issue with. The few bad apples spoil the bunch. I think that glosses over something really important. And what it glosses over is that research has shown us time and again that 3.5% to 5% of any given group are responsible for half the trouble in that group.
Yes.
And, you hear the 80-20 rule of the Pareto's principle, but it's actually not accurate. 80-20 is far too generous. The real number is 3.5% to 5%. So there's 1 million law enforcement officers in this country, almost. And 3.5% to 5% of them should not be cops. Mm-hmm. I'm happy to go on the record and say it. And I'm happy to also go on the record and make a commitment to our community that when we find those individuals in the Lebanon Police Department, they don't get to stay. Now, the last thing I want to cover is the legality as far as the amendments go. Mm-hmm. To my knowledge, I cannot find a single case of LPR systems being addressed by the Supreme Court. I may have missed one, but I don't think so. The only court of appeals that I can find that addresses LPR systems is in Massachusetts, and they've got a few case laws up there. And I think we can all agree that things are probably a little bit different in Massachusetts than they are in Missouri. Mm-hmm. So I think I covered all those items that you brought up.
I'm just saying, out of, like I said, if you take all the arguments and you kind of take away some of because there does seem to be a lot of misinformation. I'm not saying that there's misinformation on both sides, right? And you kind of have to. That's the age we live in. That's where we're at. So I'm going to give you the final word. I just want to say that. As it circulates, we have set the commenting to you have to follow Lebanon Now to comment on this. Not because we want to hide it, because I see that there's a lot of flyby people that as you get on an algorithm, anything Flock related, it goes. So, if you want to yell at him, at least you got to give us a follow for it. So, but you have to follow Lebanon Now to do that. And as I said in my opening statement, thank you tons and tons for coming on here, putting yourself out there, educating the public. There's a lot of concerns out there, and I'm going to give you the final word. You can talk to me, you can talk to the citizens, you can talk to however you want to do it. But Chief, thank you once again for being here.
Well, thanks for having me on. I'll just buzz the lens since I'm sitting right here. I think the important thing that I want you to know is that the men and women of the Lebanon Police Department have been making police cases way before Flock came along. And if our community feels strongly that we should not have Flock, we understand that, and we are here to serve. Our power derives in a free country, our power derives from the citizens. You give us the power to police this community. And we will continue to to police this community to the best of our abilities without flock, if that's what you ask us to do. But I would just urge you to critically think it, do your own research before you make a decision either way, and before you try to influence our city council in their decision making in any way. Because I do believe it's a valuable tool, and I do believe that the Lebanon, and I know, and I'm committing to you that the Lebanon Police Department will use it responsibly. And if anybody steps outside of those rules, they will be they will be addressed. It will not be permitted.
Okay. I'll turn my mic back on. I just didn't need fat guy breath in there while you were doing something poignant. All right. Everybody stay tuned to Lebanon Now. Once again, I want to iterate, we're neither pro or against. We want to make sure that the credited information is there. We live in a copy-paste society that we kind of get decided what our argument's going to be and go spread that argument around. Take some time, listen, verify what he said or didn't. I'm going to do the same thing. I want to say that you've always never turned down a request to come talk about the things, and I appreciate that. So I know the work session is coming up on the 24th of August. You can come there and you can see the work session as you guys talk through this. We have ordinance and putting some guardrails for flock. So Sarah, hit that button anytime. I'm out.